Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
We are honored to be joined by retired physics professor, 30-plus years at the University of Connecticut, and he's a top physicist. I was reading over his bio here. I've got one of the shorter bios here, but I'm not going to read the whole thing because we don't have time. He could tell you more about himself, but he has also published quite a few books, and a few of them pertain to the whole global warming hoax that we're facing and that we're here looking at. And so I am very honored to have Howard C. Hayden on with us. Thanks for coming on.
You're very welcome.
Let me just ask you, as a physics professor, is the Earth closer to the Sun than Jupiter?
Absolutely. Jupiter is 5.2 times as far from the Sun as the Earth is. That's
but maybe we're liars, you know. I mean, that's all these environmentalists do. They won't actually look into what we say. They just, you know, maybe they're right. Maybe it's closer.
Well, I think they just ought to look it up in any astronomy book that they can find. And I mean, for gosh sakes, that's been known since hundreds of years. So what are they talking about?
Well, by the way, sir, I'm not even, you know, this sounds like satire, and a little bit of it is, but it's not real satire. You know, 1/5 of Americans in major studies can't find the U.S. on a map. 80% of high school graduates don't know who the vice president is. I think they're getting away with this hoax because the public literally is in la-la land.
Well, I think they are, and there are a couple things that are driving the hoax. One of them is that there are some scientists, and they are not, I repeat, not the majority, who are committed to the idea that global warming, A, is happening, and B, that we are responsible. There are some, and the media have turned it into quite a frenzy, but there is also a huge amount of money driving this scenario. For example, I saw a huge billboard at Times Square last week that was advertising gloom and doom. It showed London under ocean waves in 2092, and it showed, let's see, what the heck was it? Beijing under desert dunes in a matter of, I don't know, 30, 40 years, something like that. And so I inquired what those billboards cost to run, and I don't have anything official on it yet, but it's somewhere around $700,000 a month. So where exactly is the money coming from that's advertising this? And my own presumption is, but I don't have any proof yet, but it's people who intend to cash in on the carbon credit trading. This was a scam that was started by Enron, and so Enron went under because of its own internal malice, let's call it. The scam lives on. So we have that going on, and there are people that stand to earn a tremendous amount of money by doing nothing more than buying and selling carbon credits.
Well, it's the carbon credits, it's cap and trade, but they're talking about regulators in your house for adding new windows or when you buy a home, social workers literally over all the farms and ranches. I mean, just a reign of government terror, basically communism, but run by the big corporations where they administer it all.
Well, take a look at that first word in cap and trade. It's cap. Now, what Supreme Soviet decides exactly how much CO2 you or I or some given company or some given corporation or some given country is allowed to emit? And therein lies, let's say, a lot of control, to put it mildly.
Well, I've seen two mainstream news articles this week where the big consortium of banks are coming out saying, save the earth, we're all dead, give us this new global tax, and they now admit Now, we got the SPP documents from the Security Prosperity Partnership, and they said, well, they want a North American taxing grid. They want to tax each car. The Seattle Post-Intelligencer reported last week the government wants to put a transponder in every car and tax us, and if you complain, well, it's for the earth.
Yeah. Oh, and the children. Don't forget the children.
Exactly. It's for the children. Just from the perspective of the books you've written on this, as a physicist, in layman's terms, for people to understand, why is their claim of man-made global warming a hoax?
Well, it boils down to nothing more than a simple correlation, and that is that the Earth has been warming up and CO2 emissions have been going up, and people see that there is some kind of a link between the two. And indeed, you have to go back about a century ago. A guy named Arrhenius had figured out that additional CO2 would cause some heating of the Earth. Now, it turned out that all his numbers were wrong, but the principle remains that CO2 is a greenhouse gas, but it is a minor greenhouse gas that lies way behind water vapor, which lies way behind clouds. And furthermore, the thing that is not understood is that all of the carbon dioxide that goes into the atmosphere every year that is put up there by humans, because we burn coal, we burn oil, we burn natural gas, all that CO2 we put into the air is no more than about 3% of the CO2 that goes into the air. And the other 97% comes from totally natural sources.
Humans, plankton, animals?
Primarily the ocean. The warm ocean is an emitter of CO2. Cold oceans are an absorber. And historically, when the oceans have warmed up because of, let's say, orbital and solar effects, those have caused the Earth to warm up. The oceans have subsequently warmed up, and then the CO2 has followed suit and increased in the atmosphere.
Well, I mean, Al Gore in his film Earth on the Balance, or An Inconvenient Truth, his book and the film, he shows the graph, but he lies and puts the CO2 in red underneath the green for the warming trend. But in all the studies from all the universities and different sciences and different divisions, it all shows the same data, that about 600 years after heating, you then get carbon dioxide increasing. Carbon dioxide goes up, and then heat goes up. Is that a correct statement?
You are correct, but there was another time lag, and that is because the data that everybody refers to were taken at Vostok, which is in just fairly deep inland in Antarctica, where it is really very cold, and they pull up ice cores, but the data points in that graph are about 1,000 years apart. And it took more, later research to sort of correlate things deep in Antarctica with things nearer the shore, where the snow piles up faster, and you have higher resolution to determine that really the CO2 did come after the temperature changes. So that, let's say, 30, 40 years ago, it was quite reasonable to assume that possibly the CO2 might have come first, or that they changed simultaneously because you couldn't tell from the data. But newer data that is taken within the last 10 years really nail that down.
How do they get that? Is it a spectrometer, or how are they getting that data out of the ice?
Well, you drill a core, which people do in the ice. They do the same thing when they do mining. They just make a...
Sure, I understand pulling up the plug, but I mean, what tools are they using to like get that data?
Okay, well, the first thing they do is they take part of this long cylinder of ice and they slice it into a thin slice, and they know how deep down this was, so they have some idea of the date, and then they basically put it into a vacuum system while it's still very cold.
Professor, Doctor, stay right there. We're going to come right back to you after this quick break. Thanks for joining us.